Yes, it does. And I am starting the recording function for the presentation.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great. Let's see if this works. I guess I'll try to do the slideshow thing. I think that sometimes messes it up, but let's see. Does that still show up for you, Joe?
Yes, it does.
Cool. Good news, gosh. Yeah, so Matt Mines, I'm a senior program manager here at the Energy Office. Here to just talk about EVs and EV charging programs in Colorado. Hopefully to provide some statewide context in terms of efforts being made, planning, policies, and then programs as well, and then kind of the intersection between the Energy Office and the various utilities as well. So yeah, kind of looking to provide that overview. We do offer several programs, which is primarily my focus, and have completed a number of studies. If you guys are looking to dive much deeper after this, we have a multitude of resources available if you're very curious. Yeah, so just wanted to provide a little overview, a little mission and vision of who the Energy Office is in kind of the state and our function here. And so, yeah, as Joe mentioned, transportation emissions have become, the leading emissions sector for the state, overcoming the power generation sector in 2020, and so it's critical that we address the emissions associated with the transportation sector. The interesting thing here on the right, and this is relevant to Xcel Energy's grid as of a year or two ago, I think is when this graph was provided, but kind of an interesting perspective of your typical combustion engine, as well as a combustion engine several years down the road. Of course, they're getting cleaner over time. Only if you purchase a new one. If you're driving the same 2016 combustion engine vehicle, your emissions are sort of locked in for the duration of that vehicle's life, whereas an electric vehicle is getting cleaner over time. And so that's an exciting thing about operating an electric vehicle, is as the grid cleans up, so does your vehicle's emissions. And then of course there's no tailpipe emissions, which are further contributing to the formation of ozone and other concerns. We do offer or provide a dashboard in terms of progress for the electric vehicle market in Colorado. And so we have a dashboard providing information, if you wanted to dive deeper into your county specifically, and we're curious about charging stations, electric vehicles, a number of things, and growth over time, utilization of charging stations. Our tool, the Evaluate Colorado dashboard, available on our website, is updated monthly with new registration numbers. And yeah, this actually reflects the data from maybe a month or two ago when I put this slide deck together. And so now our EVs on the road are approaching 50,000 instead of 42,000. So it's pretty rapid, considerable growth. And then charging stations are reflected there on the right in the map. But that growth curve, is anticipated to, of course, trend upwards in terms of adoption. Electric vehicles are experiencing considerably, rapidly growing adoption in the state. And so, we have various scenarios described, but our statewide goal is to have 940,000 electric vehicles on the road by 2030. And so, obviously we're in still sort of the beginning years of the 2020s, which is still mind-boggling to me. But, a long decade ahead of us to make progress. We do have various studies over the years that we have used to inform our programs, programmatic developments, policy developments, understand the impact. And so, yeah, if you're very curious about, electric vehicles or charging stations or statewide policies, A number of them are kind of outlined here. We had a study with NREL a number of years ago on fast charging, an air quality analysis done with SWEEP and the City of Denver and the Regional Air Quality Council. This is also several years ago. And then every 2 years, we update our Colorado electric vehicle plan with, market developments, and then, revise our goals, accordingly. Also have had a gap analysis for infrastructure completed, so we can kind of see where we currently stand and where we need to be in order to support our electrification goals. And then a very recently completed medium and heavy duty vehicle study as well. And then following that, we'll have a couple more studies out in the near term, including an EV equity study, a battery storage paired with fast charging study, and then a roadmap to 100% electrification of the light duty sector. And so lots of material if you're a EV enthusiast. And then programs where I kind of mostly live, we're offering several programs to really build out that infrastructure statewide. Charge Ahead Colorado, our DCFC Plazas program, and then our Corridors program that I'll dive into a little bit deeper here. And so let's see, actually, maybe what presentation do I have here? I do have a deeper dive into these slides, but so we do have kind of a consideration for energy efficiency and renewables within our programs, really looking to reap the air quality benefits, associated with pairing technologies, including, Energy Star charging stations and, mitigating the additional load created by charging stations through, energy efficiency or renewable upgrades to the site host. Charge Ahead is our longest running program. It's a partnership program between the Energy Office and the Regional Air Quality Council. When the program first began, there were only about 50 stations statewide, and then as Joe mentioned, we funded over 1,500 stations to date, and so pretty rapidly developing infrastructure. Much of it, focused in kind of the Denver Metro North Front Range area, but really statewide, I think travel is becoming a very viable option in an electric vehicle, and many communities across the state are investing in charging stations, which is tremendous. And so this program provides grant funding for what we call community-based level 2 and DC fast charging stations, with a whole range of participating organizations in the program, from local governments, utilities, hotels, convenience stores, your typical convenience store fueling station, ski resorts, small towns, chambers of commerce. We have an effort to electrify all of our scenic byways as well. And so we have, scenic byways participating and developing partnerships along the byways to get infrastructure at, regular intervals along, the byways, and then, supplementing our corridor programs. And so really a statewide effort, and a long-standing program that has built out a good amount of infrastructure. Our Corridors program is a kind of one-off offering, where we contracted with an organization, ChargePoint, several years ago to build out 34 locations along, all of the major interstates, state and U.S. highways throughout Colorado. And so these stations will be, at regular intervals, of course, along, the major corridors, as you would assume them to be, like I-70, 25, 285, 50. Currently, we're about just over halfway through the 34 locations. I think 18 have been operationalized, with the remainder of them being finalized over the next year, and kind of an anticipated completion of all 34 locations in 2022, which is exciting. Actually, that 18 number obviously contradicts the 17 on the slide, but this morning we were updated that a site in Brighton was energized, and so excited to have one more online. And then our DC fast charging plazas program is going to be our regular ongoing offering that supplements the corridor program, as well as provides infrastructure, fast charging infrastructure in the metro area, to supplement multifamily residents and drivers for Uber and Lyft and high mileage fleets for urban area settings, and people who don't have the opportunity to charge at home, or who are in need of that quick charge. And so the Plazas program is a statewide program where we're looking to install between 2 and 8 stations per site. We've run a couple funding rounds so far. The first 2 were focused on the metro area, with the third becoming a statewide program. And so looking to install it again in ways that supplement the corridor program, and really make it just an easy choice to drive your electric vehicle from your home and to all the other places you want to be in Colorado. And so that our programs, I guess, in terms of what we've learned, and there's my 2-year-old daughter, if you can hear her, that the programs have been iterative and have evolved with the market. And so we're doing data analysis and collection, and looking to use that data to inform revisions and kind of next iterations of the program, and then really looking to solicit feedback from participants in the programs and other stakeholders through our Colorado Electric Vehicle Coalition, and just kind of market-based feedback to make sure that the programs are being responsive to what is the state of the electric vehicle market. Obviously the EV market is rapidly changing and developing, with just regular updates from the various OEMs about their plans to electrify their vehicle offerings, and charging station investments from private companies, as well as, of course, the federal announcements. And so looking to have the programs be responsive in a way that helps the market move forward. And then I guess that kind of gets to that last point of it taking a village and regular communication with various folks, including local governments, utilities like Xcel, and the various charging providers and NGOs, and of course there's a wide range of interested parties. And so keeping that communication open, that way it's as I said, just a very rapidly developing market. And so we're looking to collaborate and coordinate with folks and make sure we're being responsive to what is needed. I think that's my brief overview of kind of our efforts. I hope we can have a discussion, and hopefully that got some questions raised in your heads, and happy to chat further. Here's my contact information. If anybody wants to reach out with specific questions, happy to connect further and help as well. I think, let's see here, get my stop presentation thing. Cool. I think I've stopped it. I'll queue up Ryan for his utility perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Give me a sec. Get that going. Hit play. Great. I can't see anyone's faces, but I think this is working because I checked it earlier. So I'll start going. Let me know if you see nothing.
All good,
Yeah.
Ron.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, again, my name is Ryan Odell. I'm on the transportation team at Xcel. Particularly, I'm on the policy and program planning. So, really just what Matt queued up. There's obviously so much going on in this space. We operate in a number of states, but our biggest footprints are at Xcel or at Minnesota and here in Colorado. So today, I definitely want to highlight a lot of our EV vision as a whole, but then quickly dive deeper into what's going on here in Colorado. Hopefully, letting you all know a lot of things that a lot of new things that you may not be aware of. Maybe you'll be hearing some things that you've heard in the past, but yeah, I want to highlight what we're calling our drive towards a carbon-free future. Specifically, I'm going to be talking about our transportation vision. I didn't come up with this title. Thankfully, my colleagues did recently, where we have also published a report, same title. So I'll be sure to send the link in the chat and or with follow-up, so that if you're interested, you can access this along with all the other resources that Matt shared as well. But it probably goes into a lot of things that I won't touch upon. It'll go into some deeper detail, but yeah, I just want to highlight this carbon-free future commitment that we're focused on, and how transportation is a huge part of this. So, if you'd like to, you can always go to our website /carbon, and really our overarching company commitment is to be a net zero energy provider by 2050. And us being an electric and gas utility, it's obvious that we are going to be focusing on carbon reduction there, but as you can see here, transportation is that third and equally as important pillar of how we can achieve that. As we all know, the transportation emissions piece of the pie is now the biggest. So, for decades we've always focused on, well, what's the low-hanging fruit when it comes to energy efficiency, and we've gone through that over decades. And now with transportation, we're looking at it and saying, okay, what can we gain in terms of taking a vehicle from an internal combustion engine to an electric vehicle? So yeah, feel free. I'm happy to send these links, and if you want to check out all these reports, we have one for gas, electricity, and as I said, transportation. But yeah, now I just want to dive deeper into our EV vision and what that looks like, and what that looks like for Colorado. So, at a higher level, I do want to focus on from now till 2030. And I know I liked you said it's going to be a long decade, Matt. I feel like it's going to end up feeling like a real quick decade as we get close to 2022, and we have a lot of these goals set for 2030. But for Xcel across our service area, we want to power 1.5 million EVs by 2030. As Matt pointed out, in Colorado, there's the statewide goal of 940,000 EVs on the road by 2030. And I did have another graph to just kind of give you some perspective. I think our goal for Colorado will be, close to 600,000 EVs in Colorado specifically when it comes to that 1.5 million goal. And so, obviously we're going to be a big part of helping the state achieve its goal and helping reach ours. And I'll hold myself to using the word win-win-win. Let's use it less than 5 times. But in order for us to really hit this goal, there are a number of things and benefits that we want to be able to deliver. So a lot of this is, being able to help customers switch from petroleum and gas vehicles over to electricity so that they can get those fuel savings. Another thing is making sure that we don't flip them over and everyone charges at certain times, or we don't have the rate structures in place and electricity ends up just costing more than a gallon of gas. So here we kind of have this goal of having electricity cost $1 or less per gallon equivalent, so that we can make sure that customers are getting those economic savings along with the environmental savings of an electric vehicle. And a big part of this, of course, is going to be, how and when we charge, and making sure that we're not all charging during peak times, and then, do we always have to remember to charge off peak, or can we support this through more managed charging services? But yeah, the last, piece of this is, again, the carbon reduction element of electric vehicles, and why we, beneficial electrification has taken off. Because, not only do we want to reach that 5 million tons of carbon eliminated annually by 2030, we want that just to continue to improve as we make our energy cleaner and cleaner as we move forward. So that's kind of the higher level vision. Here's getting in a bit into more of the specifics of our strategy and some of these priorities, and how EVs really fit in very well with our overall carbon-free future. So, being a part of the clean energy transition, kind of like hitting this over the head over and over, but focusing on the transportation sector and how big of a piece this is for addressing emissions and how we can reduce it. So this graph here is just looking at our analysis, saying a typical gasoline car is emitting 4.2 tons of carbon a year. If we can get that to becoming an EV charged in our current system in 2020, that's a reduction from 4.2 to 1.8. And then you can see over these next decade, by 2030, we can get that reduction to 0.7. And then when we inevitably hit our goal of being, net zero and having 100% clean energy, you see that bar disappear. So that's obviously a huge aspect of how electric vehicles support our carbon-free future, and how we can reach our emissions reduction goals. Getting more into the details of, we really are all in. We want electric vehicle adoption to increase significantly. No matter where you are in the country, the graph, it just has to do with scale. So, the way California wants to hit a certain number of EVs by 2030, the graph looks very similar to Colorado. It's aggressive. And so how are we going to help support that? Because even though we're 10 years into this new generation, and I've written however many blogs on how the EV revolution will be taking over by tomorrow, it's going to take a bit more time. And especially where we are with this technology, we still know that awareness with the vehicles themselves, and with how to charge and where infrastructure is still very low, that we have a lot of work to do. So I don't need to read through all these things, but I think the biggest thing for us is, we can always look at cell phones and say there's the people that wait in line that want to get the new technology every single day. And there's the people that are either still using that landline, or they've gotten a flip phone. That's the spectrum that we're working with customers. And so we want to be able to bring them all along and understand, each experience is different. So that's a big one for us. And then another huge thing about this whole thing is, utilities will love to talk about how EVs are going to bring on this new load. But at the same time, we don't want to be doing that in a way that it just adds problems and constraints for the grid. We want to do this in a way where you can have those increased sales, and with that, we can lower rates, keep bills low, and I'll probably use my second or third. Like, that's the win-win-win right there. We can tackle emissions, we can help customers and help this market transformation. We can also keep costs down. There, as Matt highlighted, and I'm sure we've all get the alerts, every day, there is so much going on at all levels. And that's a very exciting thing, because I think we've seen at the local level, or at the regional, state level, transportation electrification really taking off. Now we've got federal things happening, across many different areas. But, here in Colorado, there's really important things that we can hang our hat on right now, and it's the state level goals that we have. Even just pointing to the goal of 940,000 EVs on the road, that goes and really coincides with Xcel's goal. There are incentives. There's the utility incentives. There's all the incentives that Matt just highlighted, amongst many, many more. And all that we're doing is really trying to understand how the incentives are working, and what levers are helping folks adopt electric vehicles, adopt charging infrastructure. And a huge one I should have bolded and highlighted and celebrated. Colorado being a ZEV state and getting ready for the ZEV mandate to kick in, that's going to be huge, because just historically what you've seen is there becomes so much more inventory comes to a ZEV state when it comes to electric vehicle models and availability. So that's a really exciting thing for Colorado, and definitely something to just track amongst other states as you see, in some states it's moving forward, or they're trying to pass that. The more states that do that, I think the more that they'll get to see more EV inventory. At the federal level, again, we're all still pouring through the recent infrastructure bills, but there are a lot of incentives and funding mechanisms that are coming to Colorado. So the fact that we're all in touch and just still, figuring out where those dollars will end up, it's great to know that there are those dedicated dollars going towards transportation electrification. I was going to take the latter half of this presentation, and I'll check my time really quick. But I just wanted to go through our portfolio that Joe brought up at the very beginning, kind of give you just a high level of the programs that we're doing. But then I do want to highlight some of the newer things that we're doing, that we're preparing to launch, that are definitely focused on communities and some of the medium duty electric vehicles that we want to start testing. So, you all being in communities where we want to focus on, what are the optimal vehicles that we could switch from, whether they're hybrids or whether they're gas or diesel vehicles that could switch to fully electric. I'm excited to share a couple of those, but getting a little ahead of myself. This is the TEP, adding another, abbreviation to our long, ever growing lists. But this is our first Colorado TEP, running from 2021 to 2023. As Joe said, we've got these 6 portfolios. We're now at 20 plus programs. Couldn't give you a specific number. I know we're in the 20s and climbing a bit more, but here's just a breakdown of all the sort of comprehensive way we want to address transportation electrification in Colorado. So looking at residential, multifamily, commercial, advisory services, partnerships, research, innovation that we call PRI, and the purchase and lease rebates. At the bottom in blue, you can see just there is a focus in each and every one of these of dedicating money and dedicating services to those lower income communities and places in Colorado that have been designated as higher emissions communities. So we really want to make sure that we can support the areas that are, kind of impacted the most to date, and where we see transportation electrification can really help reduce emissions dramatically, and with that improve air quality in those areas and communities. So kind of just breaking that down and parsing, some of our key objectives in some segments is, we want to continue to focus on home charging. And, right now we kind of always go back to the notion that we just have so many customers that don't know you can plug into a standard wall outlet. Not to say that that's all you need to do at your home if you'd like to install a level 2 charger, but it continues to be a barrier that, Colorado specific market research, as well as, national EV studies, there's just a lot of lack of awareness and information around home charging. Again, we want to really focus as well on helping fleet operators and fleet and workplace charging, because when you're not charging at home, you're probably charging at work. So that's another huge area. And then supporting public charging. So you could see in Matt's presentation, the goal of in helping public charging kind of connect the state, us wanting to help that as well. And as you can see here, we do want to address these key segments, and we want to address these key barriers that we, continue to be the top barriers, is that awareness and information of the vehicles, of charging, addressing the upfront costs. This is still just an ongoing thing that we want to continue to work on, and hopefully our purchase and lease rebates, along with all the other incentives out there, can help address that. And then lastly, just making sure that we have the tools in place to help people charge, how and when they charge, so that they can be charging when costs are the lowest. kind of more holistically as just, how we want to focus at the community level. And in Colorado, there are so many communities, cities that they've set strong, climate action goals or sustainability goals. So, how can we look at a community and help them through a variety of ways? So this is almost just a different way of looking at our portfolio, while putting at the community at the center. But with a few added things that I'll probably get into, but we want to focus on how we can support through programs, through advisory, and then also working with dealerships and helping them so that if you're interested in EV and you go to a dealership, you have a good experience. A really important thing that I've already talked about several times, but the managed charging aspect of all of this. We have really two ways of supporting this right now that we call static and dynamic optimization. So sorry if those are confusing, but I can explain those now. Static is really just that behavioral change where if I get home and I'm about to plug in and it's about to be an on-peak or on-peak time, I'll just either set a timer or set a reminder to myself to shift my charging behavior to later that night or doing it earlier in that morning so that I'm not charging during that peak time. The dynamic part of it is more of that true managed charging that you're probably familiar with through even just direct load control with an air conditioner. It's that more managed, you can charge here. If it starts to hit a peak time, we can then stop and then shift you to that later time, so that you aren't again charging during that on-peak period. So for managed charging, there's a ton of tremendous benefits of just making EV charging as energy efficient as well as grid optimal as it can be, so that it can help consumers and help the grid. I sorry about this slide. It's a lot. I think what I can sum it all up is that what we did is with all of our programs, we've offered an enhanced rebate for low-income customers. So when I share these slides, this can be a great resource, but please don't feel the need to read any of this right now. Just know that we have an incentive that we can offer for the program itself, and if somebody qualifies through sort of being low income or anything, then we can provide them with an additional enhanced rebate. So we're hoping that can really help in an equitable way. In bolded here, you can also see, this overlaps a lot with higher emissions communities. So as you can see here, if a part of the state is designated as a HEC, a higher emissions community, we offer that enhanced incentive as well. So as you can see here, through these programs with multifamily and commercial, even our small commercial program, if you are in an HEC, then you can get these additional incentives as well. So again, we just really want to ensure that we can bring that transportation electrification benefits to everyone and in an equitable way. Advisory services is kind of the, you don't just have me from the regulatory side talking to customers and telling them about these. We have an entire team that can help customers, when they need their handheld or where they need that support, we can help them for residential, for fleet planning, community planning. And that also includes our dealership network, which I think right now we have well over 20 dealerships in Colorado, that we have worked with that are a part of the EV network where they've been trained, and we provide them with information on how to educate customers on electric vehicles and really pointing customers to these as an option. So that's really exciting that we've had that grow, and dealerships are very interested in being a part of this. But yeah, with my last couple of minutes, I really want to talk about PRI. This is a lot. This is really just the tenets of the PRI portfolio, which is very unique. It's really trying to focus on where we can partner with organizations, with cities, with labs, where we could conduct research and test out sort of innovative ideas that aren't ready for that full program scale. maybe they're ready for sort of a pilot study. So, here are just the things that we've thought about as we've gone through and looked at a variety of different ideas. From there, we've developed those sort of through program design and shared these with stakeholders and gathered their feedback so that we can get that product put together and get those ready for launch. So we're not really we're not out in the field with any of these, but I do want to share several of them with you just so that they're on your radar. So here are 5 PRI projects that we're working on right now. We've shared these with stakeholders, and we're currently sort of getting their feedback and finessing these. So getting ready for their sort of final filing and getting those ready so that we could go out into market with them. But as I said, these are kind of the innovative areas that we want to be studying. And so this first one is, as you can see in this picture, we want to focus on working with waste management fleets and incorporating an electric refuse truck into that fleet and testing its use, testing how it charges, how it operates, just seeing, how and if this is a viable option for whether it's municipalities or waste management companies to incorporate electric refuse trucks into their fleet. Number 2 is electric car share. So there are obviously car share services across the state. We're going to be working with Colorado Car Share to expand the number of electric vehicles they have in their fleet and expanding it from the urban areas to more rural and areas that are low income, and just seeing how electric vehicles in this car share fleet operate. Number 3 is more of a research study that we're going to be doing with NREL. And this is focusing on if we talk about increasing EV charging in a particular neighborhood, how much can we support that increased load through managed charging versus when do we actually need to go in there and really start upgrading the grid in that neighborhood. So that one's a bit more less of a pilot, but more of a research study, focusing on the current system and what the impact of EVs is going to be. So that graph, as you can see, is just seeing that orange additional EV load that you'll be getting. How can we curtail that with managed charging or adjust that and shift that with managed charging, and where do we actually need to invest in upgrades? Number 4 is kind of similar to the waste management trucks, but it's electrifying paratransit vans and buses. This is very important mode of transportation for people, whether they don't have cars or are unable to drive. And we have these throughout, all of our communities and cities here in Colorado. So, electrifying these and seeing again if this is a viable option for electrification is something that we're really excited to be seeing. And then this last one has to do with, vehicle to grid integration, or more broadly, V2X. So I kind of get a kick out of all of these Ford F-150 Lightning commercials because they all involve them plugging the truck into their house to turn the lights on during a power outage. And so, going just for that and figuring out, how do we actually achieve that? But at a grander scale, how will vehicle to grid integration play out as we think about resilience and power outages? And, everyone does think back to what happened in Texas last year. And so if you have these portable storage that can move around and then bring things back online, we really want to get a better understanding of what that will actually look like and how we can actually support that. So I know that's a lot. I can send everybody the rundown on each of these projects if you'd like to learn more. But I'm really excited to kind of share these with you all because these are getting out into Colorado communities. These are getting us into that sort of medium to heavy duty space, which, as you can see in our portfolio, that's an area that we're not really getting into just yet at the program level, but it's coming, and it's obviously going to be a big part of this moving forward. And then I'll wrap things up with some results that we have from our most recent and first Colorado TEP semi-annual report. So these are annual emissions reductions that we calculated. So our team estimate in 2021 that we have almost 38,000 light duty EVs in our Colorado service territory. Without going into all of this here, you can just see the calculations that we've put together in terms of how much you can save between an internal combustion engine and an electric vehicle. Sorry. And so, using that, we've calculated 75,576 tons of CO2 reduction in 2021 and just over 117,000 pounds of NOx reduction. And I feel like the great thing, and just to reiterate again, these numbers, one, are always going to keep going up as we get more electric vehicles, but the emissions and NOx reduction per vehicle is also only going to improve over time as our generation mix gets cleaner. So I feel like I wish I had a ton more of results, but this was our first report that we just filed back in October. It's the first of many. Our next one will be in April of 2022. So these numbers will then be updated again. But we just really are getting all of the programs launched at this time. So by next year, we'll have everything out in the field, and these numbers will only have more things to report. But I'm going to stop there, I think, because I've hit the end of the road. And yeah, I don't know if there are any questions, but I'll stop sharing and I'll stop talking for a second.
All right. Thank you, Ryan. Matt, thank you both for your presentation. Very interesting. So we do have about 10 minutes left for questions from the audience. If anyone has anything, please come forward and unmute yourself. I think I see something in the chat.
What's up, Craig?
Hey, Matt. How's it going?
Good. Long time no see. Saw you had your hand up. I figured I'd just call on you.
Question for you, maybe Ryan. So totally get the need for level 3 fast charging to be able to drive, longer distances beyond the range of even say like the Tesla, which is, around 300 miles, right? And that's important, right? So if you're thinking cross country or across state, you're going to need that, right? I guess, as the vehicles, being an original Leaf owner and now down to about 80 miles of effective range on a charge, I can't drive to Denver and back without charging, right? And so like the level 2 segment of the market, at least in the kind of public spaces, it's like, I think part of the challenge is that if you own a Tesla, chances are you don't need to charge anywhere but at home for 98% of your trips. But it's like this, oh, well, I got an electric vehicle and there's a charging station. And so why don't I just plug in? It's like we have to kind of change that mentality around, even with newer Leafs, 175 miles or greater. Even if you're driving from Fort Collins to Denver every day, you can get back and forth without a charge. And so I'm thinking about that existing level 2 market and how that, expands or doesn't, and the need for it. And so I guess I just, curious if you have any thoughts about how we maximize the availability of those level 2s without just plugging in for plugging in's sake.
Yeah, I guess my response to that would be, I think an appropriate fee structure is needed. That way it's, if you're sort of a person who's able to charge at home, but maybe you're doing so publicly for advantageous reasons where, if it's a free L2 charging station, I think a fee structure that's either competitive with home charging rates or, home charging plus, a slight premium for, sort of the additional infrastructure would be a viable solution to that, because I guess I see level 2 still being a viable technology in the long term, given the dwell times that, most vehicles have, and the time that vehicles sit idle, where yeah, if a vehicle is sitting idle for 8 hours, it's going to very easily be able to charge, on a level 2 station and get folks home. And then it also provides, supplemental infrastructure for folks unable to charge at home. And so, that's where I think the fast charging comes in, is supplementing multifamily residents as well as public L2 stations. I think public L2 stations, of course, would be probably the preferred way to charge a vehicle for most multifamily residents, because DC fast charging is such a considerable cost premium to a level 2 station that, if you have the choice and you have the time available, I think, from a just pure cost perspective, I think the level 2 remains sort of the preferred method. And then also the potential degradation to the battery is another consideration for folks looking to fast charge versus the level 2. But I'd open it up to Ryan as well.
Yeah, I think what we're really excited to learn about is, especially with the programs where there's an option for customers to opt for level 2 or level 3, and with those programs just getting launched in September, once we get more of that data, and then we can go through our evaluation process and learn so much more about this and what led to decisions for opting for level 2 or level 3. What were the reasonings? Like all of the things that Matt just said, hopefully that we can gather that information through our programs so that we can evolve and say, and have answers for that specific question. Even, is this viable, or is it less viable? And we can focus more on one or the other, or at that point in 2024, something else might have already popped up. But I'll just provide more data once we get it.
Okay, any other questions? I did have a question for each of you, if I can jump in front of Greg one more time. So Matt, I noticed that some of the funding for the programs comes from grants, and so are those state or federal grants, and is there a dependence on those grants being available going forward to be able to do more across the state?
Yeah, so we, I guess we're providing grants to, organizations as subrecipients of our funding. Through ChargeHead, we've had, I guess, several different funding streams. Several of them, I guess, so we have some federal funding through congestion mitigation and air quality funds. We have the Volkswagen Trust Settlement providing funding. There's also the EV Fund, which is a kind of virtuous cycle between EV owners and infrastructure, where if you purchase an EV and register it in Colorado, a portion of that EV fee goes to the EV Fund, which then funds infrastructure. And then we also there will be a new transportation enterprise established in the Energy Office. This was recent legislation from June that'll provide a pretty, it's a fee on various types of delivery and vehicles. And so that'll provide, I guess, projections up to $300 million over the next 10 years for charging infrastructure and e-bikes and potentially high emitting vehicles. I think are the kind of eligible project types within the Energy Office's enterprise. And then CDOT and CDPHE also had separate enterprises with specific categories for eligible projects. So I guess sort of long answer, we're not too dependent on external funding at this point.
Okay, thank you. And Ryan, I'm just curious, with so much of this transition being dependent on personal changes in behavior and what kinds of vehicles we drive, when Xcel's trying to project these reductions going out to 2030, is it a little bit of a wild card in terms of trying to project what the public will do to understand what those reductions could be?
I will say that we conduct several scenarios, and there are probably how the difference between the high and the low. I think I had a mid-case scenario in one of the bar graphs showing, what that looks like versus our goal. And it's a difference of 4%, but that's a lot when you consider a 4% increase in say our electric sales from electric vehicles. So it definitely is swinging a lot. I will say, as you're looking at even the industry studies, so I think for us a major study is the BNEF, the Bloomberg New Energy Futures EV Outlook, and everything for that is going out to 2050. So those are all really just going off the graph at that point. So 2030 seems like we're on pace. Our goals are not far off if we line up what we're looking at with what the Colorado statewide goal is for EVs. I don't see that being too far off. They kind of line up quite well, and then we can support each other. But at the same time, you look at where we're at and where we want to be, and that's where I feel like it feels more like a short decade than a long decade, because it's really going to ramp up considerably each and every year. And in 2020 to 2021, it was really more of a hitch than anything, delaying with inventory and supply chain. So when we get back in swing, the next 8 years are going to be, I could use any pun here, just full throttle,
Sure.
pedal to the metal, like it's really going.
All right, thank you. So Greg, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to say, kudos to Xcel for thinking about that low income segment of the EV market and the additional sweeteners, including for used cars. I think that's a really, really worthwhile kind of effort. We'll see if it makes a big difference. And then Matt, I do agree with you that sending that pricing signal for level 2 charging would make you think like, oh, wait a second, I don't need a plug-in. I got 180 miles left and I only got to go 20 miles to get home. And I mean, I know a lot of right now the EV spots are kind of prime parking spots, right? You don't have to pay for them. You pay for parking, but you don't pay extra for the charging. And so that's the reason to park in that spot, because it's usually a kind of prime location. And, as a city that owns numerous charging stations around the various public facilities, the only challenge there is the subscription cost for like the credit card readers. And, then you get like the facilities folks going, oh, it's just easier to keep it free. And that's not going to solve your kind of congestion bottleneck problem. So interesting concept for sure. We'll see how it goes, especially if sales do take off, like Ryan was.
Yeah, gosh, we've been seeing considerable growth over the last 2 months. So keep an eye on the Evaluate Colorado dashboard. Just very, very rapid growth. I think it was 8 or 9% of new vehicle sales in November.
All right, thank you guys. I know we're just past the top of the hour, so I do see maybe another hand going up, or maybe not. Maybe it's gone. So with that, I think I'll probably bring the meeting to a close. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Ryan, again for your excellent presentations and insights. I just had a couple of announcements for the chapter for those that are still on. So first, we do have 2 board member positions open. So if there's anyone interested in being on the board for the Rocky Mountain State section, certainly send me an email and express your interest, and we can go from there. And then the other thing is we are featuring on our website now job announcements. So if you have folks that you know of that are looking for positions in environmental, certainly check our website out. If your company or your entity wants to advertise positions on our website, certainly reach out to me or anyone else on the board and we can get those posted. So with that, thank you for attending, and we hope everyone has a great day. Thanks.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.